Well, they just get revised to the interviews replaced.
I heard.
And she
Check 1 2, check 1 2, check 1 2.
meeting notice. Because the public will be
Go ahead.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Friday, January 31st Policy Committee meeting, first meeting of 2025. As the outgoing policy chair at the end of 2024, I'm going to open our meeting. And the first item on our agenda this morning is an election of a committee chair for this year. I want to open a minute for anybody who would like to put their name in. I will put in mine, but I'm happy to have a conversation if anybody else would like to.
So yes, I was not putting in my name, but I was going to nominate for you to put your name in as committee chair.
Thank you. Mrs. Weinberg, are you interested in the policy committee chair? No. Okay. Well, we're gonna thank you for the vote of confidence. Thank you for the clarity, and we will keep moving. And thank you for the chance to serve as your policy committee chair in 2025. We have, I think, my proposal, absent objection from others, is that we do the alcohol waiver first, because I think we have some people who are here for that purpose. And then maybe we spend just a minute talking about kind of process for the year. I think, Mrs. Weinberg, we often use first names in policy. Would that work okay with you? Mrs. Weinberg, it is. So Kendra and I did some with Jim, a process to invite feedback from other board members and build a schedule for the year. We can talk about that after we do the waiver. Great. Dan, do you want to say just a minute about the alcohol waiver and how this works?
Yes, so traditionally, if party is requesting to serve alcohol on CPS property, they need a waiver from the Board of Education. Those come through policy committee for a very short presentation about what is proposed. The policy committee chooses to move that forward or not, and then it goes to the board for a vote on a waiver. So we have a guest from Fairview Clifton German School requesting alcohol waiver this morning, and I think they're online.
That's great. And Dan, how long do we often give presenters? This can be quick, right?
I believe this is a repeated annual event that they've received permission for. So very, very short.
Mike, we're excited to hear from you all. I would just let you know you have a friendly audience here, and we can move as quickly as you're ready.
Mike, you can go and unmute your mic and camera if you'd like. Mike, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you guys. Sorry, I am. I can hear you guys. Sorry, I'm not used to Zoom. I'm a Teams guy.
We will not hold that against you. And please, you can start whenever you're ready.
Yeah, I will keep it short, guys. I sent a little 5-slide deck over there, and I can see that up on the screen there. I'm Mike Weigel. I have a kindergartner over at Fairview Clifton German Language School. As I was starting to meet some of the parents earlier in the year, they were talking about their Fasching fundraiser carnival that comes up March 15th. And they kind of talked me into being the chairperson to bring back the beer garden. They've had it a couple of years in the past, and then last year they couldn't find a parent that was willing to be the chairperson. So I stepped up to the plate. I don't think they've had any issues in the past. I just know that we need approval from you guys, and we need to fill out some paperwork and send it to the state. On the second slide there, I put a little history there, and the last bullet is kind of where we're at, is that we sent out a survey to parents. 80% of the responses came back positive that they want to bring it back. So that's what I'm attempting to do here. The third slide is a layout of the grounds. We're looking at putting it behind the school next to the carriage house. It will be marked off, flagged. Signage will be in place in accordance with all the policies from the Ohio Liquor Control Board. And in order to move forward, I've prepared a F permit that I sent over to you guys. And I need a signature from you guys first. Then I go to the police, get one from them, and get it notarized and send it off to the state. I think we got about 2 weeks left before we hit our deadline with the state. So if you guys have any questions, please send them my way. But I think it's a good event for the school. I have no problem being in charge of this and making sure that it runs smoothly. And I have no doubt that it should be a good event with 0 incidents.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Dan, do you have anything on the process piece you want to share?
Yep, we have received the permit. We'll sign and return that today, and you can move forward with the process with the state. In the meantime, presuming the policy committee moves this forward, it'll be presented to the board at its next meeting, I think on February 10th.
We also have Saturday. I don't know if that's
If yeah, again, you can move forward with the state process. I think we can probably do the 10th.
okay,
Yeah.
and that'll work
Yep.
fine. Great.
You don't need to wait for the board to move forward with the state process.
Great. Any questions or concerns from board members? No. Okay. Have a great event. You've got our thumbs up. Hope it goes really well. Thanks for doing everything you're doing for Fairview.
Oh, thank you guys.
Okay. So moving right along, I think just before we get into the substance of the next couple, what I'd like to propose is that we run a process between now and the next month's meeting that mirrors what we did when I became policy chair last year, which is that we set up an agenda that has some we could always change this, but some default structure that would say, at each month's meeting, we're going to make sure we do for council's office what they need from us. They usually try to review every policy that the board has once every 3 years. And so we need to create some space to work through kind of the regular upkeep and cleaning and updating of those policies. We would also create some space to take on any policies that any board member would like to see us look at this year. And so we would send a request out to board members saying, hey, is there anything in the policies you'd like us to look at over the course of this year? Maybe we even do it just 1 6-month period at a time, because things may change between now and then. And then we build a schedule so that over the course of the 6 months or the year, every board member gets their policies looked at or their ideas looked at. And then we create a little bit of space at the end, which is the empty space for the things that we can't anticipate, which might be an assignment from a board meeting, or maybe it's something we didn't quite finish and required more time from a previous meeting. But then when we get together, we would follow that system. So we start with what council needs from us. We have a calendar where we work through board member requests. We have some reactive space for anything we haven't finished, or any assignments that come from the board. I'm open to other ideas. Do people have a different way they'd like to set up our meetings this year?
No, I thought that method was very efficient last year. I think it gave room and space, as you spoke about, for general counsel to present to us what we need to work through, as well as, again, that inclusive aspect where all board members on the committee, as well as from the full board, have an opportunity to incorporate some of those policies worth considering for review. So I thought that was very efficient. And I think, again, it honored just everyone's maybe perspective to look at certain policies that may need to be reviewed, or opportunities for new policies to be implemented.
Thank you. Mrs. Weinberg?
So I was just gonna add that I think that we definitely go forward with the past. I think it will allow for collaboration with other board members as well, and for us to bring it back to the full board. And I think it's great that we can also bring in ideas that we think might need to be discussed. And I'm looking forward to a positive year of policy. Policy is one of my favorite committees, so.
Sounds excellent. Excellent, excellent. Okay, so then I would just ask, Phyllis, if we could get your help sending an email to the board that says, if you'd like to ask the policy committee to take up a particular topic over the first 6 months of 2025, to please submit those to you. Can we say by the 15th of February? Give everybody a couple weeks. Maybe could you remind people a couple times? just between now and then? Great. And then I think for the rest of today, we will just try to get as much good work on 4 through 7 done as we can. Am I missing anything? Okay.
Not missing, but we added to board docs earlier this week 2 additional policies we'd asked the policy committee to look at. One is exemption to physical education requirement in high school, and one is the special ed model policies and procedures. If we could spend a minute on both of those policies today, we'd appreciate it.
Sure. Yeah. And those are not currently on the agenda.
They're not on the
right?
agenda, but they were added to other business on the board docs.
Okay. And can you just say them one more time?
Yeah.
It's this. Go ahead.
It's one is exemptions to the physical education
Yep.
requirement, and 2 is the special education model policies and procedures. Information on both policies, again, on board docs and in your packets in front of you today.
Great. So maybe let's do finance committee. And then maybe the new policies, and then we can do year 2.
Great.
And then do number 6.
Great.
Sound okay? All right. On to policy 0130.
Yeah, this was assigned by the board in the last board meeting because I think the board is pausing on the health and safety committee. And so we included in your packet and on board docs the current assignments or responsibilities of the health and safety committee. And to just, I think for discussion as to whether those should be assigned to other committees or how those should be addressed in the current board policy.
That's great. What committee members think? As a place to start, did you have a question? As a place to start, I can imagine this process becoming quite onerous or keeping it pretty simple. And I would offer maybe there's a simple way to do it, which would be to say there's a different section of our bylaws that talk about the committee of the whole. Maybe we could add a section that says over the course of a given school year, the administration and the board will ensure that the following topics are reviewed as needed. And then we reference everything that's in the current health and safety committee section. What I'm trying to do there is make sure that the issues don't fall off. Like looking at child abuse prevention should be in our bylaws. And I don't know how frequently it's going to need to come up. And so I'm trying not to tie the hands of future board members. But I'm open to other ideas.
I was gonna say that I definitely wanted to make sure that we include the topics because you never know, we may need to talk about, for example, bullying might come up several times. And so I don't want us to be limited to say, oh, you can only talk about it at this particular date. So I'm in agreement of going with the below topics and then just ensuring that we're able to have that piece state what you had just stated. Now, hopefully you remember what you said so that we could have.
That's why we record these things, because Lord knows I may or may not remember.
Actually, it was, you know, really good, short and to the point. So thank you.
Thank you. Yep.
Yeah, I agree. So incorporating the language in the Student Achievement Committee of the Whole bylaws, I think that helps to encompass all of this. And I think the language as needed ensures that we're not providing specific times that we'll talk about it, but as we recognize that it's necessary for us to discuss those areas of concern, so, or those topics. So I agree with that.
Any that work for you guys? Are we doing anything illegal?
We can do that and move it forward for approval for the full board.
Great. Excellent. So like we won't have to look at it again. You'll just bring something. That's great. All right. 7455.
Yeah, this actually comes from our finance committee, and I'm very happy to have Assistant Treasurer Mike Guston here to introduce it. Thank you, Mr. Guston.
Thank you, Dan. Treasurer Wagner's online. Not sure if she wants to add anything. I'll just quickly say This is kind of a cleanup of our fixed asset policy. Probably not too exciting. The big change is that the federal government changed their capitalization threshold from fixed assets from $5,000 to $10,000. And so in order for us to change, we have to change our policy to match theirs. That's really the big thing. We also cleaned up some language throughout and added kind of some definitions about asset tagging, asset disposal, asset transfers.
Thank you. This seems pretty straightforward. We are updating a policy to bring it in line with current state rules. Yeah.
Mhm.
Any questions or concerns?
Just a quick question. Did you say you added the definitions, like the asset tagging, so to the policy with,
Yes.
okay,
Yes, the
think that's
things that
helpful.
are highlighted in yellow are new,
okay, perfect.
which they're things we already do. It's just putting it in policy.
Mm-hmm, okay.
We hope this makes your life easier. Anything else in 7455? All right, 3440.
Again, Mr. Guston's here, but I'll just say one thing. There were several policies that the policy committee moved forward for either amendment or rescission of policies at the December meeting. Those were scheduled to go through on January 6th, but because that meeting was canceled, they have not actually gone through yet. This is among them. This is one of the policies. It's job-related expenses in the 3000 series. Somewhat fortunate that it hasn't gone through yet because we have one additional change we're recommending, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Guston.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hoying. So kind of things worked out well in that, you guys were reviewing the policy. The only change we had, which is the yellow highlight, is adding the ability for us to reimburse people for per diem rate instead of actual receipts. And we had quite a conversation about that in finance committee beforehand, but really the idea is to make life easier on our employees and on our staff and stop being, we call the quote, the food police. So we're trying to get out of that business and into streamlined and more efficient roles.
This feels like an everybody wins type thing. Is that right?
Mhm.
I would agree.
Great. Any questions or, and sorry, I was in that the finance committee meeting, but I'm realizing that my colleagues were not. Do you all have any questions about that? Or
So yeah, just a quick question. So as it pertains to the per diem recommendation, do we foresee a positive impact with our overall budget transitioning to this method versus how it was before?
Yeah, there will definitely be a savings in staff time. So there won't be, I don't know that there'll be a clear dollar savings. There will definitely be savings in staff time processing all these things.
Okay.
For sure.
any other
Yeah.
questions?
Nope.
So we'll put this through for, and sorry, Mrs. Weinberg, another kind of habit I was trying to build last year was when we say to general counsel and team that we want to pass something through to the board, we decide here whether we think this is something that can go through in a consent agenda or whether it's something that we should pull out for like a larger discussion. And so our board meetings are plenty long. I think my default is like, let's put it in the consent agenda unless we're really concerned about it, but I'm open to other perspective. Do people feel okay putting that? Because the per diem thing is new. It's not just cleanup, but it's also, I think, just a good thing.
No, I
Well-
would be okay with putting it through the consent, and I'm sure that I will voice if I don't agree on something and that it should definitely include it. So,
I would kind of differ on that just because this one is a little bit new and it's talking about just kind of the difference with the finances. I know it's a quick overview, but I think it could be helpful just to be introduced to the full board. And if they wanted to, if finance committee wanted to have further discussion around it, I think that could be helpful too. I mean, I'm all in favor of passing it, but I think just giving a quick update about it could be helpful.
I think that's great. And it's also a good reason to bring up. I think I didn't necessarily know that this was going to happen, but I was quite happy with the fact that I think the things that we passed out of this committee last year were all unanimous in the
Mhm.
committee, the three
Yeah.
board members supporting it.
Mhm.
So I think if there's any concern, let's go on the side
Mhm.
of listing it separately.
Mhm.
Okay. Anything else on 3440?
No,
Mhm.
I have the first two are for the consent agenda and the third 3440 should go through as a separate vote.
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, great. Moving on to new policies. Affirmation of specific beliefs. This
Very
sounds
happy-
like only good news.
two new policies that are related to Ohio Revised Code, and I am very happy to be delegating this morning. So Stephanie Scott, good luck taking the next two.
Yes, these next two policies came out of House Bill 214. And so basically, pretty much we are required to have policies covering these two topics. So the first one is called the affirmation of specific beliefs. It is codified in ORC 3319.614. And so basically, again, this was passed in order for pretty much it's requiring that the district not solicit or require any employee or applicant for employment to basically opine about specific beliefs. And so again, this is something that was a required policy out of House Bill 214. We don't think that we were currently infringing on this, or our current policies pretty much cover kind of the prohibited activity that this bill is trying to address. But again, it is state law that we would be required to have a policy that states this. And so pretty much, this is pretty much straightforward from the actual ORC, the language itself. So happy to take any questions on that one.
Thank you, Stephanie. Board members, committee members?
I was just gonna say, I don't have any questions. I reviewed over. The board bill. I don't have any questions as of right
I'm good.
And then the same for the next.
I may have a.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah.
This just smells funny. Like, what is the story? Like, is this like an anti-DEI thing? Like, is that what this bill was like when it came out?
Well, there's several things that was encompassed in the House Bill 214. This wasn't the only one, and you'll see what the next bill as well came out, or the next policy came out of that as well. So I'm not exactly sure. It's hard for me to question what the intent is of the legislator. But again, we feel like it's reiterating kind of what is already the expectation of teachers and staff. And so, again, I think I guess I think the assumption is maybe that there's teachers who are doing this, but we feel confident in saying that our staff is not, or that we already have policies in place that would prohibit or,
Yeah.
kind of oversee this type of behavior. So.
And thank you. And just so can sleep well at night. There's nothing in this that feels funny on the First Amendment. Like, there's nothing in here. This is saying like that we're going to let people believe the things that they believe.
Yes,
Not saying that we're going to require them to
Require.
believe X, Y, or Z.
right. And if you look down at the end of the policy where I guess it's in some ways listing some exemptions, but again, it's reiterating the same facts that you just said, that this wouldn't infringe on or restrict an educator's academic freedom and so on and so forth. So again, it kind of pulls out some of the ideology that again would be the expectation already within the education environment.
That's great.
And I think the introduction is very clear too, in saying that the district shall not solicit or require an employee. So I think everyone is still free to have their own beliefs or affiliations. However, we obviously can't impose or force anyone to subscribe to anything. Is that what that's saying in this?
We
Okay.
wouldn't expect our staff to
Right.
try to indoctrinate our students,
Right.
and this is just basically reiterating that. So.
And I wanted, I think I love the way that it's titled in the policy, prohibitions on affirmations of specific beliefs. And the way it's on the agenda with just affirmation of specific beliefs, I think was one of the reasons I was unnecessarily concerned. So I wanted to just compliment the language that's in the policy itself.
Yes, and again, this is reiterating the actual section of the ORC, which that's how it's titled in there as well. Policies prohibiting affirmations of specific beliefs. So.
Thank you. Do people want to put this in the consent agenda or not?
I think this is another one, since it's a new policy that's being presented. I think it could be helpful to just.
List it separately.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Small quick water pony.
Yeah.
Great. When it's listed on the agenda, can it be prohibition on affirmations of specific beliefs?
Yes.
Okay,
Mhm.
great.
And then the next policy, again, came from that same bill, in regards to religious expression days. And this one is basically, again, the policy, asks for the district to kind of reiterate the reasonable accommodation will be made for students with sincerely held religious beliefs and practices. Specifically, it's calling out certain religious expression days that need to be recognized and given accommodations for students. Again, we feel that our current policies already address this. We already provide excused absences for students for, bona fide religious holidays. But this, again, particular bill, this particular section is codified in ORC 3320.04. And again, we're somewhat required to list the language that you see here listed in the policy. But something that is a little bit different is that there's specific days, which they call religious expression days, that pretty much that there be kind of a posted list of days that the district will honor an accommodation for students. And then there's also kind of a specific notice process, and then we have to also have a certain type of grievance process. So again, our current policies would encompass these days already, but this does provide some specific accommodations as it relates to what the law is calling religious expression days. So would be more than happy to take questions on this one as well.
Just the question that I have is, I know that we already have a process in place, but how does it relate in terms of with our new system? I guess we're utilizing Focus, and when we're putting in excused or unexcused, how are we ensuring that those are actually unexcused? Is there like an unexcused religious holiday like option? Because
I would have to actually look at Focus because we normally don't input attendance.
Right, which is fine.
but
I just
I'm
wanna
not-
make sure that I'm putting it out there as a general question. I know that there has been concern when you put in an attendance, whether a child has a medical reason, et cetera, it's still being counted against them. So I just wanted to make sure we put it out there to check to see that that indeed is not being affected against their attendance.
Yeah, we can double check into that to make sure that Focus aligns with that. So
Yes.
because again, religious holidays should be an excused absence for a
Right,
student.
and I'm not, again.
Yeah.
It needs a.
But yeah,
special-
but any type of, we have a separate attendance policy, which is 5200, which is why we call this one 5200.01. We were initially going to put this language in that attendance
Mhm.
policy, but there was so much prescriptive
Yes.
language that the law required us to have, which is why we pulled it out in a separate policy in this nature. But again, there's certain things in addition to religious holidays that we already considered excused absences. So again, with this one specifically, there's just certain notice requirements that would need to be included as far as if a parent wanted to initiate, I guess, these religious expression days. But again, we're already taking that into consideration. So, but it really is, it's a requirement of the state that we have a policy that states that this could be a process, but our current policy again already affords for religious holidays. And then this one also does specifically call out which, that if students are using religious expression days, that they would also need to be allowed to participate in extracurricular activities if they took place on that same day.
Mhm.
Which again, I believe is our current policy and procedure, but that's just another specific call out that the law required that we include.
Kendra, any questions? Or you want to say?
No questions. I do appreciate the fact that you spoke about if students are out for those religious days, that they are still able to attend the extracurricular activities, because I do know that as you shared, that is a state mandate, or maybe even a national mandate. I know other places kind of focus on that as well, especially as we're trying to make sure that we identify ways to keep our students and families engaged in school overall and build up that attendance, right? So even though they're absent from school that day, they're still able to participate. I still think that's a great opportunity. So it's, again, honoring both perspectives. So
Yes.
yeah.
I really appreciate all the work that's gone into this. Thank you. I have one question about
Sure.
the number 3.
Number 3.
Or just 3 days.
Oh.
Is there a reason why it's 3?
again, that was prescriptive in the bill. I mean, specifically said that in the
As a
law.
floor or as the number period?
I think it's more so the floor because again, we don't really even currently require this type of notice.
Yeah.
I mean, as far as we are honoring all religious holidays, even without this notice mechanism. So I guess it would just be a matter of if there was a
Yeah.
parent was questioning. I mean, a parent could follow this process, but I believe it already also is being covered under our current attendance policy as well.
So that's helpful. I think the one piece of feedback I would request is that we do something, or it's like up to 3, not more than 3 in a couple of places. And I'm worried that that creates a ceiling instead of a floor. Here's my thinking. If you are a Orthodox or conservative Jew, there's definitely more than 3
Yes.
that you'll miss in a
Yes.
school year. And so I'm thinking that if there was some reason I wasn't thinking of why it needed to be 3, I wanted to have a conversation about that. But if it's just that's what the state created as a floor, I'd like our policy to leave room to be and not that it's just about Jewish families, but that it's can be flexible as needed. I recognize the risk of abuse, right? But there is the sincerely held piece in there. So like and
Right.
other smart people must have thought about this, and so there must be some way to figure it out.
I will say that the specific bill language does say this not more than 3. But again, I think that this would be for maybe school districts who currently don't already have, maybe they're not honoring religious holidays in the way that our district currently is. So I think our main attendance policy would still cover if there were more than 3, but this is prescriptive language and it's specifically related to, they're calling it these religious expression days. So it's almost just like a specific, almost carve out that the state has made. But again, our current attendance policy goes beyond this already. But this is required language. So I guess we will look into it to see if we can change that. But again, it's kind of prescriptive in how they're relating to these religious expression days. But I want to be clear that you're correct, that there are certain religions that have more than 3 days, and CPS's current attendance policy would accommodate
Like
more
if
than 3.
like if there is a high school senior who can't take an exam that's on a Jewish holiday and they've missed 5 for legit Jewish holidays, and they're not going to graduate because they fail a course. I can't imagine the state of Ohio would be allowed to prevent that student from graduating. Right? I mean, that seems like a big First Amendment problem.
That would be the hope.
I know just enough to do this badly. And so like, I may have made mistakes in any of this, but like, if that's right, there's no way that law is constitutional. Right? So could we just write it differently and then let the state of Ohio come after
Sure.
us?
Yeah, definitely. Because we agree with you.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm not crazy.
No.
That's always good to hear.
And to your point, I also wanted to add that as you'll see in the packet, there's kind of an attachment that lists kind of religious expression days. And this has been created by the state. And so one of the requirements is that we post a list like this on our website, and we can either create our own list or we can use the state's list. So I've just attached what the state has already created as their list, but it is very specific in the language and also on here that this is a non-exhaustive list. So just because a religious holiday is not included on this list doesn't mean that it won't be honored. So I did want to pull that out. But again, that's why that page is listed in here, because this is also a requirement of this law that we post a list of such on our website and so on and so forth.
I really appreciate the whole conversation. Just want to make sure I'm clear on what the next steps would be. So we would not put this forward yet to the board. You all would come back with some language that was different around the no more than 3 days piece.
So I think technically this is already in effect. So via the ORC, that's the language that we're following. But as far as our official language,
I
can
understand.
change that.
The state's going to do what it's going to do.
Yes.
I'm not an elected state representative. I'm not governor of Ohio, but I am a school board member. You know, and like I think we should do the thing that is I'm somebody convinced me my hypo is wrong. I feel like that hypo is right, and if it's right, I don't want to put that in our policy. But I'm open to feedback if I'm missing something.
I just want to make sure I'm tracking with you. So the state is saying that at minimum, the requirement is 3 religious expression days.
What Stephanie was sharing was that the state law says every school district has to say in its policy up to 3.
Up to 3. Okay.
And later on, it says somewhere else not more than 3, and that the state of Ohio is telling us that we have to put that in our policy.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's right, I'm suggesting we say no.
Okay.
But I'm also looking for reasons why I might be wrong.
And could you just expound a little bit further for me? Just again, I want to make sure I'm on one accord with what you're sharing and your rationale for saying no against the recommended policy as it is by the state is because.
So my argument would be there are observant religious public school students
Mhm.
whose religions would require them to miss more than 3, could require them to miss more than 3 days of school.
Mhm.
You can imagine a situation where that could have real consequences for them.
Mhm.
I made up an example where, like, say they miss a final exam in high school, they fail a class, they miss graduating because of that one class.
Mhm.
If that's the case, and the state of Ohio is saying, we're not going to give you a diploma because you missed too much school,
Mhm.
and the student says, yeah, but the reason I missed
Mhm.
school is because of my sincerely held religious beliefs, the state can't do that.
Mhm.
And so if the state is asking us to do that, I'm
Mhm.
asking that we say no.
Mhm. Okay.
But I also, like, I might be wrong about any one of those pieces, which is what I wanted to ask about.
Yes, I was just gonna add, the state is saying up to 3. And I think in our verbiage, I think saying up to 3 is fine, but we also understand that there are more days that they may miss. And I'm pretty sure that we can also work that out within the verbiage of this policy. But if it's up to 3, I mean, it's 3. It can't be 5, it can't be 6, but they are aware that they can miss those days, but it will not be excused. That's what I'm reading and understanding.
So,
Yeah, I
Yes.
think you're reading this policy draft accurately, and what I'm saying is that draft creates problems.
It can create problems, but I think we can maybe somehow add something into there as well.
Yeah, like rewrite it so that it is
Right, we can rewrite it, but I still think that we need to leave the 3 in there because that's what it is. And with an understanding that a student may miss more than that due to their religious beliefs. But we're hoping that it won't affect their ability to graduate or to do what they need to do in class, et cetera. Because, for example, if you have a student who's sick and they miss
Mhm.
20 days, I mean, they miss 20 days, but we're willing to work with them to figure out how they can make that work up and how they can fulfill their requirements to still be back on task for school.
Yeah, I think the difference is that if a student is sick, it's an excused absence.
not all.
Not all the time.
all of the time.
So that is not
Which
always
is
the
what we
case.
need
Yes,
policy
and
around.
we do need to
let's
change
do that
that.
too.
But I'm just saying,
Yeah.
in having this conversation, I still think that we need to go with the 3, but then we can add some verbiage to it to help to maybe provide some understanding that you may miss more than the 3 days due to additional dates. I don't know the verbiage. You guys can help me with that. But what we can do to ensure that you're still able to graduate and fulfill all the things that you need to do for school.
Yeah, I think I disagree,
And
but
that's
do you?
So from my understanding, you are able to miss up to 3,
Mhm.
which will be counted as excused absences, right? For those religious expression days. That's how it's reading at the moment. General counsel.
I mean, I think we're right to be skeptical of what the General Assembly is doing, but sorry,
right.
I think we're right to be skeptical of what the General Assembly is doing, and I'm not sure even the law is written consistently right now.
Mhm.
The new law that relates to religious expression days, I agree with everything Stephanie said. It's written by the book, completely verbatim of what the statute says should be in our policy. But we have a separate policy that is supported by current law
Mhm.
under our attendance policy, which says observe that it is an excused absence for the observance of religious holidays. A child shall be excused if the child's absence was for the purpose of observing a religious holiday consistent with a truly held religious belief of the child or family, not limited by 3
So they
days.
So
Yeah,
that's where the conflicts.
I
So
truly don't think even the law is being written consistently at
well-
this point. So you know what I
Right.
mean? Like
Mhm.
And so, like,
I see
so
what you're
we,
saying.
Mhm.
so what just to make sure I follow this, Dan, like you're saying that we have another policy
Yes,
that is
yes, we have
also
another
there
policy.
because of state law. And
Yes.
that policy that also follows state law has a different thing in it that does not cap it at 3.
It does not.
Does not
Here we
cap.
have a competing piece of legislation. We're also trying it to follow it verbatim, and it is asking us to do something inconsistent with its own prior statute.
Unless you think a religious expression day is different than a religious holiday.
Right.
Right.
I'm
And isn't
not-
this new?
I mean,
So wouldn't this be updated though?
Head against the wall.
I know.
Yeah.
Understand what they're trying to
no,
do.
I'm with it. I think I want to be thoughtful about our time. I know we have other stuff that we want to do. We want to get out of here as soon as we can. I think I'm uncomfortable voting in favor of something that will say, I want to get the language that was in here.
Up to 3
Uh,
days.
Yeah, because I did want to add, because if you do read the policy of the religious expression days closer in the law that goes with it, it does go beyond just a religious holiday. They can also participate, organize activities. So I think, again, in some ways, it's trying to create a separate category that would also
Okay,
honor
Then I think
non-holidays as well.
then maybe so again, I'm only one person. I think the things that would feel fine to me, and I'll just vote this way and people can do what they want to do, is either vote no on this current version, or that's option 1. Or option 2, rewrite it such that we define a religious expression day as something that is not a religious holiday.
That could be good.
And if that's the case, then our current policy would let observant students miss the religious days that they need. Heaven forbid we could design a calendar so that we'd have to in the first place, but that's another topic. But I think that might be a way of creating some consistency where none appears to exist.
I would agree.
What do you think?
Yep, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
We agree, because one thing we were going to ask at the conclusion of this is we were going to just add a small amendment to the attendance policy where it talks about religious holidays, that there is a separate policy
Great.
that references religious expression days. We were just going to add that sentence to amend that policy as well. So it's a cross-reference. So,
Okay.
like
So we
that.
got into this mess because I missed, silly me.
Asking good questions, because again,
Um,
that's really the challenge.
I guess I thought that a religious expression day was the same thing as a religious holiday, but it turns out those are 2 totally different things in Ohio.
Yes, and it's
Yeah.
something new. This wouldn't have been religious expression day. It wasn't a thing before
I gotcha.
this law was passed.
I gotcha. Okay, are we good? I don't want to rush this.
Yes.
Somebody else don't wanna prolong
So we're
anything.
going to
We're gonna
reword
do-
this one and bring this one.
Yes, please.
Back
Yeah,
to the
okay.
committee.
That sounds excellent.
Okay.
Rob? Oh, we got more topics. Oh, the thing I always forget. Thank you, Rob. Great.
Thank you. If you'd like to
Rob?
speak during the speaking to the public, please click your hand icon. We'll ask you for your school and this district association, and we'll invite you to speak at the end of the meeting. Thank you.
Sorry, you were trying to help me out. Thank you, Rob. Okay, so we've got, I think now we're going to do the exemptions to physical education and the special ed model policy.
Great. I have 2 very non-controversial ones. I gave Stephanie all the, okay. So, I'll start very briefly with the exemption to physical education requirements. This is a current policy that our science and health curriculum chair, as well as our assistant superintendent for high schools and director over career tech programming. So that's Mike Turner, Amy Randolph, and Elizabeth Wolf are recommending a slight change to our waiver policy. Essentially, there's reasons that a high school student can be excused from I think it's a 2 credit requirement for physical education. We have already included interscholastic athletics and marching band and cheerleading, which are in the statute. Additionally, in the statute, and I don't know if this was added or we just didn't include it originally, it's the junior ROTC program. Participation in JROTC is another reason that you can be, a high school student can be excused from that phys ed requirement. And we're asking that the board approve that as an addition to the waiver. Also, again, not included was show choir. And so we're asking that we just include all the reasons under the statute that a high school student could be excused from physical education. Supported by all those departments. If you have any questions, glad to respond.
Can you maybe, I guess, expound on the physical relation aspect of show choir, like the level of intensity as it pertains to
Demonstration. Demonstration.
As I understand, we actually don't have show choir currently. But The question was that exactly what I. oh,
Okay,
you
but
know
it's
what?
Stephanie.
Giving this over to Stephanie.
No.
I don't know. We don't currently have show
Uh-huh.
choir, but the thought was we should include all the different reasons under the statute. If the board doesn't agree with that, we can certainly.
You sing and dance. You
I mean,
sing and
that's,
dance.
Okay.
that's, you,
Yeah,
yeah,
you sing and
that,
dance.
that requires a
That's
lot of
the
physical
business
activity.
class.
Yeah,
Regular
I
choir.
just want to know.
Yes.
That's why I inquired.
Like Glee, basically.
Okay. So
Lovely.
it doesn't mean you're not singing and just doing a two-step, but you're actually.
You do, I mean, well, when I was a long time ago, I don't know what, we were moving. I don't know if it would be at the Glee level, but technically that is the concept, is that you sing and dance. As you know.
That's what I was wondering. I have a question, but I'll let you. So this is this was adopted in 2013. I just wish this were there when I was in high school. Like I just remember going straight from gym to cross country practice, and like it seemed silly, and I knew other people in other schools who didn't have to do both, and this is a smart thing.
Yeah. And let me make sure I'm reading this correctly. And so this, if they are participating in these type of activities, does it have to be specifically related to CPS, or they could be involved in activities outside of CPS and still, it's just specifically for CPS?
I think it's specific to CPS,
Yeah.
interscholastic athletics. So it's being on a CPS high school
Mhm.
athletic team, a
Okay.
CPS marching band, a
Okay.
CPS show choir, or
Mhm.
a CPS
Okay.
cheerleading team, or JROTC.
Okay. That's fine.
Wonderful. We can put this in the consent agenda. Yes, unless show choir warrants a longer conversation.
It does not.
And Stephanie will give us a demonstration.
If we're sitting there at 9 o'clock on a Monday talking about this policy, it is only going to be because there's a demonstration. Special ed model.
Yeah, thank you. And pleased to be here with Special Ed Director Christine Reeves. I don't know if it's an annual requirement, but it's a requirement of school districts to adopt the Ohio Department of Education and Workforce special ed model policies and procedures, and/or develop policies and procedures of their own that match the policies and procedures that the state prescribes. We have for some time adopted the special ed model policies and procedures. They were updated, I believe, in 2024. And so this is asking the board to approve the policies and procedures of the state as updated in 2024. Anything to add, Chrissy?
That just nothing to add, except that this ask is to update it for this school year. And he's right, we do have to come back then annually by, I believe it's the end of November, to approve them for each school year going forward.
And I just have a question, and I'm sorry, but I just thought about this as you stated that these are policy and procedures. But what is the policy and procedure if there is something that's not happening? How does that work in terms of what needs to go by this? How is that reported? How do we hear about that?
If we are not doing something.
Yes, yes.
There are several avenues for that. And it's leveled. First of all, teams will reach out to whoever supports their school directly. The parents will do that.
Mhm.
And then they can escalate it up from there. Sometimes they call the state directly. There are
Right.
quite a few avenues for them.
And so then is the board updated through you, Dan, that you would give us information? And then our parents, do they have access to this?
This is publicly available for
Okay.
everyone. There is also, based on this, a guide to parents' rights that they are given on a regular basis. Anytime we have an IEP meeting, anytime there are changes to the IEP or the student is evaluated, or if there's a discipline issue related to it, they are also provided with that information.
And is this provided on our website? And the only reason why I ask is because I've had several parents, they say that they don't necessarily know the procedures. So I want to be able to direct them.
We
So if
do.
you could just send me that information would be great.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. We can move that forward. Any other concerns? And we can move that forward on the consent agenda, I think. Yes. Okay, great. Last two, 1240. I know that Eve had some concerns about some of the language in the eval policy that she was raising. I'm open to the idea that there could be other things to discuss in there, but I do not remember any others. Was there another reason this was on here?
No, I think it was just to kind of finalize, and it was to add that piece about I think you changed it. Let me pull it up really quick. But it was just the one comment or the one wording that she had. But other than that, I don't think that there was anything else that I recall. I thought that we were able to kind of put this through after that particular update was made.
It's
I-
already
yeah.
put through. We
Yeah,
approved
we
it last
approved
year.
it.
I think this is a request to reopen it.
Well, no, I
Um,
thought that we were talking about something in a wording. Remember, there was wording on, let me see.
So from my understanding, I
Pull this
believe
up.
she didn't like, and I could be wrong, but I believe there was concern about the specificity in terms of the students that we identified.
part
That
of the
was Dr.
evaluation.
Moffett.
No, that was,
It was Eve.
Oh, I thought
yeah.
Moffett pulled that up. Okay.
And we did
Anything.
we did in the second to last meeting of the year, approve parts 1 through 3. And then in the last meeting of the year, approve part 4. So the whole thing is approved. And any board member can absolutely ask us to reopen anything.
Mhm.
I just wanted to make sure I was clear on who was requesting it and what the request was. And I think Eve was requesting it. And I think she had some concerns. Now, I think if we're not able to articulate exactly, I know I can't. If I can't articulate exactly what her concern was, I would propose we just pick this back up in February once I've had a chance to talk to her, or we invite her to come.
Mhm.
I think
Um,
you should invite her. That would be great because I cannot remember exactly what it was.
Phyllis, could I just ask for your help adding that to as we build this calendar? So we'll invite Eve and we'll put this on the agenda for
Mhm.
Feb. 8515. Yeah, this was what we were still
Alright.
talking about.
Yes, so we had an opportunity to introduce the mental health and wellness policy at the close of the last policy meeting. And so we had an opportunity to really identify this policy because we have a wellness policy that focuses on physical education and nutritional wellness, but we did not really have anything really identified for social and emotional wellness and mental health. And so General Counsel, as well as Dr. Manisha House and we established really what we thought would be really beneficial in mapping this policy out. And so we wanted to start by honoring what our guardrail states, and that's making sure that we're honoring the needs and the talents of the whole child. And we identified 5 goal areas that we think are really specific. So goal 1 is just really talking about those identified staff that will be in support of our students in the mental health scope. And then goal 2 is really just addressing that we believe that every school should have a calming space. I know that it created some discussion around kind of the finances or how, if that will be any financial impact or challenge, but really having a space set aside for students as well as staff to just self-regulate if they need to. And then the third goal was around incorporating social and emotional learning into the curriculum. And when we think about social and emotional learning, there's not so much focusing on mental health type of therapeutic approaches, but really those skill buildings, right? Those positive mindsets and behaviors. And then goal 4 is around adopting that positive behavior intervention and support framework, ensuring that all of our schools are operating under that scope. And then lastly, just focusing on that all of our schools and stating that all of our schools have co-located partners and agencies. And so we wanted to make sure that we were outlining this to showcase this within our district to say that mental health and wellness is important to us as a district and really help to provide that awareness and also make sure that we are destigmatizing how individuals look at mental health and wellness. So wanted to provide that overview for you, Mrs. Weinberg, as well as for those that are listening. And there were some few additions that we talked about at the last meeting, making sure that we included the intervention specialist. And I'm glad that you are here today. And the reason why I wanted us to make sure that we included the intervention specialist because they also do a lot of work, right, to ensure our students' wellness and making sure that the IEP plans are in place or accommodation plans are in place. So that really helps to support our students' wellness also. And there's a lot of collaboration that happens. So I wanted to ensure that they were identified on the team. We talked about There was another addition that is on here, so help me out, Dan.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So I think you asked in the first paragraph, or someone asked us to endeavor to include mental health wellness supports in every school as a means to reduce stigma.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And then so yes, I did talk about that, and then also making sure that we stated the protection and the immunity for under, state law, in terms of the liability purchased by our district. So anyone that's working with our students from a therapeutic approach, they are protected by the district under our school liability. Good.
Can I add one more thing? We,
Mhm.
I think we tried to get as much feedback from these folks as possible. There was one slight change that our school psychologists are offering, just to the definition of what a school psychologist is. I have it in writing for you,
Okay.
but they offered just for folks online or whatever, that they'd be defined as licensed to provide a range of mental health services, including the design of multi-tiered prevention programs, assessment, counseling, case management, behavioral consultation services, and crisis intervention. They serve as the liaison with teachers, parents, school administrators, and community partners to assist in developing, implementing, and evaluating prevention practices and intervention for students to enhance students' learning, mental, and behavioral health. So they
Okay,
offer that
sounds
as
good,
a
yes.
definition.
Sounds perfect to me. And that's why, as we talked about before, we talked about really making this a collaborative approach. So not wanting to rush to put this through so that we can make sure that we're touching bases with everyone that is actively working in this capacity to ensure that we're honoring everyone and their lens and the work that they do, as well as how they service the students. So I would definitely encourage to make that correction here. And then the other thing that I would just like to add to goal 5 is making sure that it says the mental health partner will be on site at the school to provide mental health support and therapy to students. I would want to make sure that we add some statement stating that there's appropriate consents in place, because I don't want it to, send the message that all students have access to therapy, or, and that could definitely not be in alignment with what parents agree with. But ensuring that there's language specifically calling out that these parents have given consent for their child to work with a therapist at a co-located agency. And then the other language that I would just add there, just ensuring that all of our partners are upholding and maintaining the Ohio Code of Ethics as it pertains to their licensing board. And so if there's any questions about what I presented with the policies.
I don't have any questions. I think it's great. It would be nice, obviously, of course, once we kind of put this together, and then of course, bringing it to the board to have their discussion on it. But I think it's good. Thank you so much for submitting this.
Thank you. So my ask with this, I'm glad that we were able to bring it back. Our discussion before was for us to just present it to policy, have a conversation with general counsel, as well as those team members that are this policy would impact in terms of providing services, for us to have a conversation to make sure that we are able to finalize it and then bring it to the full board for approval.
Absolutely.
This looks great. I'm excited to support it. I know I asked this question last, Jim asked that one of us asked this last year. I just can't remember the answer. Is the administration been through this from just a budget perspective? And whether this is going to obligate, like, I would like to do all of these things. I also want to acknowledge financial constraints to the extent that they're going to be an issue.
So good question. So as we talked about before, we really wanted to highlight what we're already doing. So none of this should be a concern in terms of finances, because from my understanding, as a district, we are already implementing PBIS. We are already ensuring that we have language around social and emotional wellness, but just having more of a in-depth conversation of how that is incorporated into the academic experience. So I don't think that should create any financial costs. from my understanding, Dr. Manisha House, at our last health and safety meeting, she was having conversation around looking into a curriculum. So that is something that would have a financial impact, but again, that is something that they're already discussing and looking into. I don't know what curriculum they may decide to adopt. But again, this was kind of separate from what we had what we were looking into, and so hopefully it can be combined into that, but I don't think it will be too much of a financial impact. And then lastly, the calming spaces. A lot of teachers already have calming spaces in their classrooms. So again, I don't think that that would be any financial concern either.
Great. Thank you very much.
Mhm.
So we're going to recommend this forward
After the team get together,
after what?
yes, so
great.
I would encourage us maybe before February's, what, wait a minute, what's our next? We'll have to determine
We'll
what our
figure
next
that
policy meeting is. But hopefully, before our next policy meeting, we could gather and then bring this back so that we can move it forward then.
Great.
Thank you. On that note, I think before we do hearing of the public, next for recurring meeting dates, if we were to do it the last Friday of the
Mhm.
month,
Mhm.
does that work for people who are
Yes.
here?
Mhm.
I think that's what worked best.
Oh, wait a minute, let
for-
me see. What is that date?
Be the 28th of
The 28th.
February.
It would be the 28th of February. March the 28th, we would, I think that's spring break.
If let me do this. Let me get with Phyllis and we will send out some options to people
Okay.
and then we will
Mhm.
figure it out. I don't want to
Yeah.
ask everybody to stay here while we
Yeah.
I'm gonna miss something in my own life too.
And I
Uh,
will just say, if it is the 28th, I know I can't do that date. I will be
So we'll
on
do something
that
different.
date. Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. Making a note of that for myself. Rob, do we have any speakers this morning? No speakers. Is there any other business? Hearing none. Yes, Mrs. Weinberg.
Yes, so I have been getting a lot of emails and I just wanted to know in terms of a policy standpoint, are we going to be doing anything? A lot of families are afraid of the raids that may be coming up. Is that something that we would discuss here or will that be weighted to the full board discussion? And then I wanted to also know, are there any other updates according to some of the House bills that have recently been passed? I know we got a big email a month ago. I wanted to kind of read and refresh through that again before this meeting, and I will say that I forgot, but I do want to open that back up to just see, are we up to date with any of the House bills that have passed? And are our policies up to date with their new things? So that would be something that I would like us to look into.
That's on the first of those around the immigration enforcement.
Well, that was just something separate that came up because of a lot of emails that I received, and then the
Yeah.
second would be.
No, I just think it's really important.
Mhm.
And I was going to say, my hypothesis is that it will come up in a full board meeting before our
Absolutely.
next policy meeting.
Okay,
If it has not for some reason, I'm very happy for that to be something that we take up and
Okay.
put front and center. And if there's anything today that you wanted to ask about with respect to that, we can certainly do that.
if anyone else has, I just wanted to bring the topic up.
Okay.
So
And then on the second one, that was just so I'm hearing it right, is that a request to get an update today or a request to put it on for February?
it would be a request to put it on for February because I do know that there are some that have passed. And I just want to make sure that we are following the guidelines too in terms of our policy compared to the new things that have came out.
I think that sounds great.
So
Can I just add, Phyllis, do you have both of those two things for February? Great. Thank you so much.
and that's
any-
all I have.
Any other business? Hearing none.